The paradox of Schrödinger's covenant. Let's talk about a philosophically revealing moment in the debate over the Abrahamic land promise. It boils down to this one simple request: define ethnic Israel. That question is powerful because many popular dispensationalist arguments rely on that term remaining emotionally intuitive, but analytically vague. The second you demand a precise definition, the narrative hits a wall. Think about it. DNA creates complications. Religious conversion creates complications. Secular Jews create complications. Atheistic Israelis create complications. Palestinian ancestral continuity creates complications. And covenant faith distinctions create huge complications. To be clear, this does not automatically disprove dispensationalism. That's a separate discussion. But it does undermine simplistic slogans like, God gave the land to the Jews, period. Because the moment difficult questions arise, the criteria for the covenant suddenly begin to shift. I call this Schrödinger's covenant. If you've never heard of Schrödinger's cat, it's a physics thought experiment about a cat in a box considered both alive and dead at the same time, until someone opens the box and forces reality to choose. In this quantum state of debate, the Abrahamic Covenant is treated as simultaneously biological and theological, but it only collapses into one side when a critic asks a hard question. Here is how this covenantal pivot works. First, the secularism observation. The critique: modern Israel is largely secular, with laws that contradict Mosaic law. How is this a holy mandate? Boom! The wave function collapses into the unconditional biological state. The pivot. The promise is Abrahamic, not Mosaic. It's a birthright based on lineage, not a lease based on behavior. Then comes step 2, the DNA observation. The critique. Palestinians also show substantial ancestral continuity with the ancient Levant. If the promise is biological, doesn't that complicate exclusivist claims? Just like that, the wave function snaps into the conditional covenantal state. The pivot shifts. DNA isn't what matters. Covenant identity belongs to the covenant people. The result? Intellectual hopscotch. When conduct is criticized, appeal to blood. When blood becomes complicated, appeal to faith. The issue isn't whether theology can contain both lineage and faith. It can. The issue is whether the operative standard for the land promise remains consistent throughout the argument. You cannot invoke unconditional biological entitlement when convenient, then retreat into theological exclusivity when biology becomes complicated. That is the superposition. And it's why framing this complex issue as simply Jews returning to their land is a powerful slogan, but it is not a logically consistent or even coherent statement when examined closely.
Thanks for watching, folks. If you have another minute, stay tuned for a real-life demonstration of Schrödinger's covenant from Mike Huckabee in his interview with Tucker Carlson.
Abram's descendants are the ones who have the right to have this land, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Why don't we do genetic testing on everybody in the land and find out who Abram's descendants are? It's really simple. We've cracked the human genome. We can do that. Why don't we do that? Would you be against doing that?
I have no idea what that would prove. I mean, maybe it would be.
What do you mean? It would prove who Abram's descendants are and who has a right to live here and who doesn't, according to the theology that you yourself just explained. And so I'm very confused as to why we don't do that. If you believe the theology that you've just explained to me.
Would we do that all over the world?
Well,
and everybody
this is the only country in the world that you've said has this covenant with God, that this people have a moral and legal right to the land.
What about people who convert to Judaism? Would they have a right?
You've just told me that it doesn't matter whether you're, quote, a religious Jew or not. What matters is that you are part of the Jewish people to whom God gave this land.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you believe that, wouldn't you want to know with a burning passion who those people are? And because of science, we can now know.
I guess you could propose a DNA test for everybody who comes here, everybody who lives here. But the point
I'm comfortable with secular nation states where none of this is done on the basis of blood. I'm uncomfortable with that. I'll just say that.
But there are people who may not have bloodlines, but who have converted to Judaism. Are they going to be able to live here? Are you going to kick them out?
By your standards, they can't live here.
No,
because
I've
you've just
never
told
said-
me
no,
that they have a right to live here because God gave them the land because they're the descendants of Abram.
They're the descendants of Abraham. But if they're the spiritual descendants of Abraham and they've now decided that they're converting to Judaism, then do they have a right to live in Israel?
I hope you see the truth. This puppet show stays on because of you.